Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's community conversation on business intelligence as a strategic nonprofit tool. Everyone rolling into our session today. So I'll go over a couple of housekeeping items and just identify what the purpose is of community conversation series. We will be sending out a link to recording. The session is recorded. Obviously, we'll send out any additional materials that might be helpful. We are very grateful that you decided to spend this 30 minutes with us. We realize it's a very busy time for a lot of our clients and the nonprofit industry as a whole, right before we jump into campaign season and end of year fundraising. But that's why this conversation is important, because if we utilize business intelligence correctly, you will lead more successful campaigns. We are very excited to have Danielle Riley from our team. She's our senior business intelligence analyst. She's worked with probably many of you on the call today and will work with some of you in the future. My name is Kelly Perry. I'm a senior digital marketing manager with Stratus Live, and I'm joined by my colleague, Katie Wilson, also a digital marketing manager on the Stratus Live team. This is meant to be an informal chat. There is no slide deck. Hopefully, you will walk away with some key takeaways and better understand the power of business intelligence. So with that said, I'm going to kill my screen share and throw out the first big question to you, Danielle. What is business intelligence?
This is my favorite question because it is pretty hard to answer. I know a lot of you out there, you're kind of always wondering that as well. What is it? What am I supposed to have? Do I have it? Am I using it? It's not crazy to not know what it means because it is so different within organizations, within industries. I like to tell the story of how my husband, who I've known doing this job longer, he has no idea what I do for a living. I can't explain it to him in a way that he gets. One of my best friends has the same exact job title as me somewhere else, and we do not work on any of the same technologies. It could mean so many things. And that can be really intimidating, but in a way, it's kind of freeing because it's not really locking you out. It is what you want it to be in your own organization. The best BI tools are the ones that fit your organization. There's no tech stack that you need to be like, we have the BI thing. That doesn't exist. There are lots of people who will tell you it's just whatever works for your organization, what works for your team. In general, with BI, it can mean lots of different things about reporting, dashboards, visuals, even Excel analysis, whether that's complicated or simple. Data flows, if you're moving data from servers or getting it from multiple places. I know a lot of you that I've worked with are dealing with that. Automation, whether it's automating your day-to-day tasks or big process automations, data flows, that's all part of it. Then you can get into the stuff that really is a little gatekeepy, I think, for people, which is the complex data science and engineering stuff. That can be pretty intimidating, and I get it. But you by no means need it. It's not a necessary thing of BI. The biggest part of it is the marrying of smart tech. Smart tech is the tech that you need, not necessarily the best tech in the world. There's all sorts of crazy stuff. More than likely, you don't need it to be successful at all. It's really the marrying of smart tech and business knowledge. To me, is the number one thing. As you're going through campaign season, doing all these day-to-day things, you know your business, you know your processes. As much as I'm in here running things, I don't know that. So a good BI setup is both of those things. You're looking at tech that works for your business. It's really a collaborative process. That's how I would define it. There is no specific way of doing it. I promise you can do it. You don't have to have all of the stuff.
Even thinking from a marketing perspective, our team can become overwhelmed by all the data we have access to. For our clients, the industry as a whole, you just want that one report or key piece of data that you think is going to catapult your campaigns to the next level. That could potentially be oversimplifying it.
That's where people get tripped up a lot. Because you think, oh, okay, there's the magic report or there's a magic set of reports. And we just don't have that. You have all this data. You need to parse it in certain ways. It's hard to figure out where to start, especially when you are in an organization where you have to do other things in your job. You would love to say, but who has time for it? You've given yourself a whole other job and you have to pick one sometimes. That's what I'm trying to do in the BI space with some changes that are upcoming. Stay tuned. It's about meeting you where you are. Even on this call, we have a lot of different clients with different reporting needs. We want to make a tool that meets you where you are. I think that's the perfect tool. Nothing as is going to be exactly the thing you need. And we'll tell you, run this report now. It might say maybe you should, but that doesn't mean that it's it. I want to have something that meets you where you are. If you have no staff and no time and you need somebody to make reports for you and you help you out, we can do that. We can work with you to get the business knowledge in there, figure out what you need. We can help with that. If you have your own data staff, a lot of people do, you already have your own reports, your own reporting strategy. We just need to get you the data, as quickly as we can, as efficiently as we can. So, it's kind of, we have to be able to hit both of those. And that's what a good business intelligence solution is. It's never going to be perfect for anybody out of the box. You wouldn't need me if that were the case. What is perfect for your organization? What's a process? You have to build that through. And what could be right today in 6 months could be completely out the window. That's the fun part. It needs to move with you, meet you where you are, and also meet you
Right.
where you're going.
Right. And yeah, that's what I feel like kind of the theme of this is like you could have everything, the coolest thing in the whole world, or you might be starting from scratch. But I think the theme of today is meet yourself and your organization where you are. It doesn't have to be as complicated as you might think. And I think we're going to talk about this a little later, especially when you're starting out. It can be as simple as one thing that you're tracking, and it might grow from there.
It is so hard to figure out where to start sometimes. It's kind of the idea, I think, that is smart in approaching BI as an organization to where, maybe you have a BI strategy, but you're looking to pivot, or you're trying to figure out, there's so many things I want to look at and I don't have time. Where do I even start? I think it's important to adopt an open and analytical mindset in your everyday processes. Not everybody is setting up processes with the thought of any reporting in mind. Sometimes I'm the last to know, and I'm like, oh, okay, that would have been nice. When changing things in the system, if you are changing the way you're processing something in a process flow, it helps to think about, okay, what is this going to look like in a report? What kind do I need new reporting for this? Does this change how I report on something? Always keep that in mind and be curious. That's one of the things that I love to do. I will get lost in a wormhole of looking up things. Like I'll just be like, I wonder how that affects this. And this isn't just in this kind of data. This is everything in life. Be curious. If you notice something and you're like, I wonder what's causing that. Is that a new thing? You can look into that. Sometimes that will lead you to some really important insights that might change the way you do certain things. Just kind of always be thinking about it. You don't always have to be building a report. You don't always have to be making a new dashboard, but just kind of have it in the back of your head from working with a lot of different clients. Well, most of those intimidating reports are pretty simple. There's not really too many complicated things. The complicated things are when you want something that's not in there. That's complicated. But most of the time, it's pretty simple. So you just have to think about it, approach it in a way you make it easy for yourself. You're approaching all of your processes in a way that makes it easier to report.
That kind of brings us into the next question, which I think we kind of moved naturally into. We're
Mm-hmm.
thinking about like what kind of questions do we need to have, asked to get either the right or wrong answers from your data. I know we kind of talked about originally like what kind of problem are you trying to solve, and kind of keeping your humanity with the data you are trying to get to the bottom of. That's the beauty of us being people and using that intelligence as a tool, is we're still the ones that kind of know what's going on within our organization to get towards those questions. But let's talk about some good ways to start getting those questions flowing for those on the call.
I think a good place to start, I'll get into the problem solving part in a minute, but I like the idea of sitting down, even if it's just yourself or with your team, and make some lists. So, like, one I would call the wish list. What questions do you have as you're looking around that you'd love to get answered in a report? As small or as big as you can think of. Just some things that you have a hunch about that you've never really looked into. Put in those wish lists. Like, if you had anything in the world, what would it be data wise that you could figure out? Make a weakness list. Things that you could report on better. You're missing this. You don't know if maybe it's the end of the world that you're missing it, but you're like, we could do better reporting this. Make that list as well. Make a strengths list. What are you reporting at the best? Look at what your current setup is in regards to that. How all of those questions you have in those lists, your setup, is it easy to get to that wish list? Is it easy to get into the weaknesses? What's keeping you from it? Is it something you just need the data in a different format? Is it something that, like, you, for example, haven't updated your reports in 5 years when that particular thing was on nobody's mind? That's probably the answer. I found it's so easy to get caught in that rut of this is what we report on because we report on it. But you need to constantly be asking this question, constantly make the wish list, constantly look back and say, cool, is that weakness still a weakness? Is that strength still a strength? Is that weakness now a strength? Has it moved? Has that strength become a weakness? As you know that your business and your processes change, your constituents change, the world changes. So, just make sure that your reporting setup is moving along with it. Are you still using those same reports from 5 years ago? When was the last time you changed up your reports? Maybe you like your reports. Is your business the same as 5 years ago?
Right.
Maybe it is, but it probably isn't. You need to stay dynamic. You have to constantly ask these kind of questions. How much you put into it is up to you. How you change it is up to you. But you got to figure out, what do you have now? What do you need it to be doing? Is it doing it? It might be. But is it also going to be dynamic enough 6 months ago where everything right now could be completely different? Could be completely gone. I think that's important. And also always ask yourself, am I wrong? Am I wrong is the most important question I think you can ask yourself in the BI space all the time.
You brought up something too that I think about myself, and I'm sure others on the call think about, and it's sort of like putting the time into it, or feeling like maybe I'm going to put this off because I don't have the time, or this is kind of a daunting task and I can't think of spending however long on this. So what would you say is a good frame of thought for reframing how to look at this? I really liked what you said about keeping up with that list and continuing that tally, seeing how it grows or changes. What about, I know some people might be sort of starting from scratch, or they maybe haven't looked at that data in 6 months. So what's your suggestion for keeping that good mindset for the BI?
I think part of kind of thinking in that analytical mind space, like I said, putting yourself in there as you're working and doing your operational things, part of that is really seeing what could benefit from doing those things you want to do. People talk about sweat equity. Now, this kind of fits that. I think of it as time equity, because even if you don't buy a new tech stack, it's a time investment. Who has this time? I can't think of anyone, and that's not even in the nonprofit space. When I worked in the corporate space, no one has time. No one wants to invest that time. If you're going to put time into a big project, you better be able to justify it. When you have some smart BI tools that you're trying to implement or you're trying to change, you really have to do it in a smart way with business knowledge, not worrying about getting the best and coolest stuff. Really saying, what's going to work for me? What's going to save me time? I'm going to start with just some simple automation of tasks. Like, I remember there were old jobs that, if some of this AI stuff had come out back then, I would save myself 5 hours in a day with like the little things that could have been automated. Just think what you could do with that time on things that, you don't necessarily need to be spending hours and hours. You can take those hours and then actually spend them, trying to deal with some opportunities that you haven't gotten to and should have gotten back to last week. That time means something. You're able to do things that you didn't have time to do before because you can't make more than 24 hours in a day. Hopefully, you're not working 24 hours. The only way we can get more time back is if we try to figure out, I guess you could hire more people, but then you've got even more money to make. It's not always so simple, but that time investment is so important. But I know it's hard sometimes, but once you make it, it can be a lot of work in that process to get it set up and moving. But if you do it right, you do it the smart way, and you kind of move your business around those things to where you can keep that dynamic, it pays off. It pays
Right,
off.
because I could imagine like setting up those, just even like an analytics dashboard, something that maybe you didn't have before, and then at the end of the year talking about campaigns that you maybe ran at the beginning of the year or something like that. And you do sort of start thinking about how much time I'm spending on the analysis at this time of the year. Well, think about how much time you could have saved if you already had those dashboards and you we're able to just use that as a snapshot to begin with.
Really, I think about it this way. One of my managers used to do this. This is back in my old job, but it's probably the same as you guys who are reporting numbers and looking at numbers every day. She used to go out somewhere and look at yesterday's numbers, going to 5 different places and copying and pasting. There was no process for this. And then she would have to send it to an email to whatever her management team was. Like that took so long. Today, that would be nothing. And this was only a couple years ago. This wasn't 15 years ago. Nobody had ever gone in and been like, could we be doing this smarter? I know that some of you guys are doing those kind of email reporting things. Maybe you can't automate all of them. I feel like they'll be there forever in some form. But if you can take out half of that, you have that time back. That's something you don't have to worry about, something that was very easy to deal with. It's little things like that, and they add up quickly. So, it's pretty worth it. That's another time. Get that time back. Put it in, get that time back.
Agreed.
So I think we have kind of been very theoretical and hypothetical here. And I know some of us are saying, okay, but I need to walk away from this with one key takeaway. What can I do today? Granted, I wish I had the right structure in place to begin to answer these questions that are keeping me up at night. But if we put ourselves in the shoes of our clients or nonprofits right now as they're entering this busy time of year, like from your perspective, what's one thing that you think folks should be focusing on?
I think probably if I had to pick like the one place to start that I think will inform a lot of things that I think will hit it kind of everyone on this call. What you'll do is this kind of year over year kind of a thing. I know people have their different campaign periods. So whether it's month over month, if you got yearly campaigns, I know a bunch of you have campaigns kicking off. Year over year reports are very helpful for that. So you can kind of look at where was I this time last year? I think that's going to inform some things. You're going to learn something just from looking at the overall numbers from that. And then from there, you can dive in. You can really dig into that data and say, okay, what kind of segments are making up this current year versus last year? What's different? What's the same? If last year was better than this year, what was the difference there? Can I find the difference? I think those time period reports of month over month, year over year, even week over week sometimes are pretty good. Identifying what your trends are and figuring out what drives them. From there, you can find out what drives other trends. If you're looking, maybe year over year doesn't mean something, but maybe season over season. It's amazing how I've looked at data of day to day. What Tuesday means versus Wednesday. You'd be amazed. If you go into big accounts, you can look at how they're performing year over year. What's different about that? Are you performing the same type of communications? Have you changed some sort of marketing somewhere? Anything with workplace giving campaigns, are you changing how you're marketing those or running those? It's good to look at that time period data first, I think is really good. And then from there, try to figure out what's different, what's the same. And it might surprise you what you find. It's okay to go in with a theory, like here's what I think's happening, but be prepared for that to be wrong. Always play devil's advocate. That's what I do. I will argue every side of a point, whether or not I believe it, just to make sure that I'm not missing something. But you can go in and say, I think it's because of this campaign marketing. Go and be like, that campaign marketing doesn't matter. It's actually this thing over here. That's how you learn. That's how you get in there. I would do the year over years to start with. I can go into this all day. You got to stop me.
I think that that's what this does. The three of us briefly spoke about this recently on that reporting and what year over year, month over month can really branch out into, because you could realize, oh, it looks like there was this huge spike in, let's say, March. Oh, we had that walkathon or something in March. We hadn't done that before. And then you start to realize, okay, what about that? Or we had even talked about, I know this is a portion of the year over years. Well, then what can we drill down into more? Okay, well, who gave last year at the 10K amount, but they're not giving 10K now? Or who's given, like 5,000 and above? And is that trending the same? Can we kind of drill down into the specific time of year those people are giving? Do we need to try nurturing a specific group of people because of that? And so like you're saying, Danielle, it's so cool because you get to, instead of thinking, I need all of these dashboards right now, I need this model built for me that's going to solve all my problems today. You could start with something as simple as a year over year analysis, and it's going to bloom into something much more substantial than just that. I don't think someone should leave here being afraid to start small or start with something they think, oh, well, we kind of just analyzed this already. Put that model on a dashboard and start keeping track of it, or start thinking, I do want to drill down into this now. It'll be easier because you've already started with some of that baseline work.
Yeah,
I'm
I'll tell you
with
too,
you
the
on that.
important part about it, I always say be dynamic. The important part about that, like say you do that year over year thing, there is there is a very real possibility you might have to change that in a few months.
Yep.
What you learn right now could be completely different next year. So that's what's so important. Is it always going to be fine? Maybe, but probably not. You constantly have to be monitoring that. Maybe you change your model. Maybe you're like, all right, you can take that out. Whatever that is, you got to stay with it, because more than likely, your business
Well,
isn't going to stay the same. Your
that
reporting
also,
shouldn't.
and I think that's the beauty of BI, right? We are trying to not be where we are in the next 6 months. We're trying to grow, see what is working, how can we double down on that in 6 months. Okay, well, we were analyzing that and we don't have to analyze that anymore because we're now in a completely different group, but we get to kind of use the same baseline of where we were reporting from or what kind of themes we were using. I think that helps drive what someone's strategy is going to be anyway. So like you're saying, it'd be great if you weren't the same in 6 months. I think that that's what many organizations would prefer anyway, the
Well,
nimbleness of BI.
it's got to be, because the world is rarely static. But I mean, that's the good part. And you will know before I will. If I make you the coolest report on the planet, I'm not in your business. I'm not in your day to day. I can only speculate so much. That business knowledge is what makes any report that I do mean something. So that's where that comes in. It's being dynamic, but in a smart way. I'm not going to send you something like, look at this trend. If it probably makes no sense. You're like, no, it's just we stopped that marketing. It's okay, Daniel. It's like that. So that's where the marrying of that comes in. I can't make a good report without your business knowledge. We're setting it up together, this process.
Thanks so much, Danielle. We're about up on time, but thank you so much for coming on and talking about BI. I hope it helps shine a light for some individuals and got you excited for what you could potentially do, because I bet a lot of people on this call have BI they could start playing with and exploring today. Thanks again for coming
Yeah.
on. Thank you all so much for joining.